5 is where it was.
Yeah, 5. Yeah, that's correct. So yes, 1. I would say zoom in just a little bit. Stop.
Okay.
That's pretty close. 3 actually gets out of the focus set, but you can't do that until we get a speaker on
All right.
stage.
I can do these 2 cameras. And then do you want 2 to punch in at all for shots? So like you do some wides, you do some ones to punch in a little bit?
Yeah, we can do
Okay. Once Mike comes out, I'll show him 2 things.
Okay.
That's 3.
Got a few more people coming out from the band, so don't want to block their view or block their pathway to get out. Then once all the band's out, then you can kind of move in position.
Minutes.
Westwood's got the groove.
The first song will start out with kind of a keyboard in the background, so that would kind of be your first shot. They'll go with camera 2 as a wide shot, but then they'll go right to instrumentals probably, so you'll want to be ready with a good key shot.
Hello.
All right, Mike, you back there?
No, he's not.
No, he's not.
Oh, somebody go find Mike.
Michael.
Mike, what day is it?
Russ is on stage for some reason. Better get him off there.
He's wanting to be a part of the band today.
I guess.
Vocalist.
All right, all the cameras are up and going.
Start the click, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure where he is.
So we had some really good shots on service. New stuff we hadn't seen before, so it was cool.
Unmute the click. We need click.
Mike is in the house.
Yeah,
Click.
I'm here.
All
Sorry.
right,
30 seconds to spare.
Click.
Yeah, good. I'm going to go get a coffee. I got time.
Somebody.
yeah, you got plenty of time.
Thank you.
Although Kim's early on, Kimberly's early on.
Oh
this
man.
time.
I don't know why you panic.
So, there for now. I can switch this back later during that first song, but we'll just leave this here so I'm up to the late.
That was good. I mean,
The lighting. I'll hold this man and put it in. We're good for those cameras.
All right, ready,
John?
Two?
all right, here we go. 1,
And
2.
2, you're up.
1, 2,
Commercial
3,
down.
4.
Good morning, Cedar Hills. And good
1-1.
morning, our online family. Let's stand together and let's worship the Lord.
One more time.
7, 7, 8, 8. 7, 7. 1, 1.
Let's worship our King. Come, let us bow at
5,
his feet.
5.
He has
All right, Luke 1 can actually drop down.
Tape's on good.
7, 7. 8, 8.
Camera 5 is going off for a minute.
Okay. 32. 3, 7, 7, 8, 8. Just let me know before you move 1. Ready, 1, 1. 7, 7. Being serenaded in Video Village.
Alright, John?
8, 8. Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, go ahead. 5, 5.
Come on.
1
There?
drop. That's good right
Here we
there. I
go
like
to the
that.
intro.
Cool.
Alright. Let's see if 6 will stay in there. 6, 6. 8, 8. 7, 7. 1, 1. 5, 5. 7, 7, 1, 1, 8, 8, 7, 7, 5, 5, 6, 6, 1, 1, 6 needs to be focused. You don't see
6.
it until you fold up on the bigger screen. And 5, 5, 7, 7.
Alright, just a second.
1, 1, 8, 8, 1, 1, 5, 5,
Going to the
3,
turn
3,
to the D
1, 1,
to the bridge.
7, 7, 8, 8, 5, 5, 1, 1, 7, 7,
Pick it up a little bit. Here we go.
8, 8, 5, 5, 8, 8, 1, 1, 5, 5, and 7, 7, 8, 8, 5, 5, 1, 1, 8, 8, 5, 5.
Here we go to the
5,
tag.
7,
Go to the A.
7, 8, 8, 5, 5, ready 2, and 2,
1 more time.
7, 7, 8, 8, 5, 5, and coming back to 2, and 2.
All right, change the click. We're in the key of G. Start those tinkly
Okay,
keys.
new lead singer on this one.
Go on the keyboard.
8, 8, 7, 7, 8, 8, 1, 1, 5, 5,
Catch the violin now. Nice.
8,
Ooh, nice shot, Liam. Nice shot.
1, 1, 7, 7, 5, 5,
Pre-chorus.
Oh, that's so good.
8, 8, 1, 1, 7, 7,
Nice shot, Tony.
5, 5,
To the intro.
7, 7, 8, 8, 1, 1, 5, 5, 8, 8, 1, 1, 7, 7, 5, 5, 8, 8, 1, 1, 5, 5, 7, 7,
Get
1,
ready for the bridge. Here we go.
5-5. Ready, 2. And 2. 8-8.
Mike, did you turn the brightness down on that? Mike, can you turn the brightness of your light down? No, the light. Just press the
Tag
brightness
it.
button a few times.
7-7.
Here we go to the
5-5.
chorus.
8-8.
So you'll only notice if it's on red or green, but yeah.
5-5. 7-7.
Doing great, Cecilia.
8-8.
Yep.
5-5.
E minor.
6. 1-1. 5-5. 7-7. 8-8. 5-5. 7. 7.
To the E minor.
1-1.
Building, here we go.
Let's ramp here.
5.
Alright. Go.
7.
A little more movement on drums, a little more movement.
1-1. 5-5. 6-6. 7-7.
E minor.
1. 5-5.
Move, drums, move.
8-8. 1-1. 5-5. 7-7. 8-8. 5-5. 1-1. 7-7. 8-8.
There we go.
E
Big build,
minor.
big build.
7-7.
To the tag.
Get movement
One.
going in your cameras.
5-5.
E minor.
8, 7, 7, 1, 1. Ready, 2, 2. 7, 7. That kind of dropped off there. 8, 8. 5, 5.
Drums, try to move your feet a little bit. Just kind of walk forward and backward just a bit. Drum.
7, 7. Nice shot, 7. 8, 8.
You can kind of like rock in like
5,
this,
5.
pull back.
Tag it.
1, 1.
Yeah, just a nice rock back and forth, drum.
7, 7.
Last tag. End on the
8,
diamonds.
8.
Yeah, just be
5,
moving in
5.
and then come back
1,
and
1.
in, out. There you go.
2.
Change the click.
When we sang this song in the earlier
We're going to
service,
be in the key of D.
that part that says, "So let go, my
5,
soul, and
5.
trust in Him," just kind of hit me. I need that reminder. Let go and trust. The waves and winds, all our troubles, they know His
7.
name.
7,
The darkness, the fear, they know His name.
5.
And then
5.
earlier this week, I was trying to find a passage in the Bible. You know how you think of some, maybe part of a scripture, and you're like, where is that? And so I started looking, and it was in Luke 19.
1, 1.
And I was so excited because it was about the triumphal
7,
entry.
7.
And that's
5,
what church is celebrating
5.
this Sunday, the week before Easter. It's when Jesus is riding in on that donkey into Jerusalem. And people are throwing their garments in front of him down on the ground and palm branches, and they're screaming, "Here's our King. Blessed be our King. Blessing to the King who comes in the name of the Lord."
7.
And then and then the Pharisees say to him, "Jesus, we're tired of this. We don't want to hear this. Make them
1, 1.
stop. Make them stop praising you." And he says, "You know, if I do, the rocks will cry out. And in the version I was reading, it says the pebbles on the side of the road will cry out. And I started thinking about a song that I used to sing at church. And it goes something like this. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. There's just something about that name. Master, Savior, Jesus. Like the fragrance after the rain. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Let all heaven and earth proclaim. Kings and kingdoms will all pass away. But there's something about that name. His name is beautiful. His name is wonderful. And his name is powerful.
38. And 8.
You were the word of the beginning. One with God, the Lord Most High.
8. 5.
Hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you.
7.
are Christ.
7.
What a beautiful name
1.
it is. What a beautiful name
You
it
can just
is.
click down.
The name of
Changing battery.
Okay. 5.
What a beautiful name it is.
7. 7.
Nothing compares to this.
1.
Yep.
What a beautiful name it is.
Shell 7.
5. 5. 7. 7.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1. 8. You're back. 8. 5. 5.
My sin was great, your love was
7.
greater.
7.
What can
1. 1.
separate
8.
us now?
8.
What a wonderful name.
5. 5.
What a wonderful name it is.
7.
The
7.
name of Jesus
1. 1.
Christ, my
8. 8.
What a wonderful name.
1. 1.
Nothing compares
5.
to this.
5.
What a wonderful name it is. The name
7.
of Jesus.
Tag it.
What a wonderful name
1.
it
1.
is. The name of Jesus.
8.
Instrumental.
8. 7.
Nice movement.
8. 8. Ready, 2. 2.
Going to the bridge.
7. 7.
Death could
5.
not
5.
hold you. The veil torn before
8.
you.
8.
Your silence
1.
the ghost of sin and
Pick it up a little bit.
7. 7.
heavens are roaring.
5. 5. 7. So you can get that kick drum.
For you are great.
1. 1.
Pick it up even more.
5. 5. 8. 8. 7. 7. 1. 1.
Bring it home.
5. 5. 7. 7. 1. 1. 5. 5. 7. 7. 8. 8. 5. 5. 1. 1. 6. 6. 7. 7.
You could zoom in a little tighter on this violin.
5.
Zoom in
5.
a little tighter. There you go.
8. 8. Good shot, 8.
To the bridge.
5.
Want to hold your shot a little longer till he calls the other shot.
7-7. 1-1. 5-5. 1-1. 7-7. 8-8. 5-5. Ready, 2. 8-8. 5-5. 7-7. 1-1. 5-5. 7-7.
Tag it.
1-1.
Tag it a last
5-5.
time.
7-7. 8-8. 1-1.
Lord, I'm just so thankful that at the hint of your name, I think even thinking it,
5,
everything
5.
else obeys. Lord, I just ask that you would open our hearts and our minds and our ears this morning to hear your word. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. Convoy of Hope has been working with people that have been affected by the tornado in Arkansas and in Mississippi. Please watch the video and see how they're helping.
A weekend of vicious tornado outbreaks has left many dead, dozens injured, and thousands grappling with destroyed communities and property. Convoy of Hope has been there from the start, responding to multiple locations in Arkansas. Team members were on the ground in Little Rock within hours of a tornado striking there, and more teams and trucks have arrived throughout Arkansas over the weekend. Distribution has already begun, and hope is being given to people in the form of food, water, and a kind word. Your support makes this possible. When we're there, you are there. So thank you from everyone here at Convoy of Hope for making this work possible. The kindness you've shown means the love of Christ is there with people in their darkest hours. Thank you.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, it's good stuff Convoy is doing. Were you part of the disaster kits making it? Anyone? Hands in the air? All right, yeah, quite a few of us. I can guarantee you that the disaster kits that you saw in those video clips were probably some of the ones that we created and we supplied and we put together. So props to all of you for stepping up, investing into that, recognizing that we can do more through this world together with other organizations. Our hope and our peace and love and all that stuff that it doesn't belong just here, but it's something that we can share and give out to people around us. And Convoy is very grateful to us specifically, to Cedar Hills Church specifically, for partnering with all that. So good job on all of you. Easter is coming next weekend. We got a lot going Easter weekend. Easter Jam is on Saturday evening. It's going to be great. Family event, a lot of energy. This room is usually a disaster at the end. All kinds of different things are going on in here, and we have such a great time. And so I want to invite you to be part of that. I want to invite you as well to invite other people, invite family, invite friends, invite people that you know need to catch a glimpse of hope and peace this Easter season. We know that what we get to do together over that weekend is going to share that hope. And so be bold, be confident, be courageous, invite people that you know into that experience. The next day on Sunday, we have 2 gatherings, 9 and 10:30. We've got same thing online for you, 9 and 10:30. We'll be live, ready to go, and also in this space, celebrating Jesus, celebrating his life, his death, his resurrection, and just rallying as a community in all of that. We have invite cards that are out in the lobby if it makes it easier for you to hand those to people and include that in your invite. So pick some of those up. We have them for Easter Jam as well as for the Sunday morning. We are concluding the series that we've been in, What's Next Today. Today's our last talk. Eric's going to be bringing that message, so get ready. He's on his way up.
End on the G.
everybody. Great to be with you. I had a couple of weeks where I wasn't able to teach, and so I've got some stuff to say to you people. So buckle up. We're going to jump right in. We are, as Weston said, wrapping up our series, What's Next? So for 12 weeks now, I can't believe it's been 12 weeks. We basically said the same thing every week, and that is that every single one of you here, whether you've walked with Jesus for 20 years or whether you've been walking with Jesus for 20 days, you have a next step to take in your relationship with Christ. Even if you're here today and you've never made a decision for Jesus, you wouldn't call yourself a Christ follower, sorry, you don't get a free ride on this either. You also have a next step to take in your relationship with Jesus. And you determining, or I should say discovering what your next step is and then being courageous enough to take it is really what makes the difference between you or I being a stuck Christ follower or being a growing Christ follower. And we don't want to be stuck. We want to keep growing. What we've discovered as a church over the years, 20 plus years into this, is that when it comes to next steps, most of the time our next steps have something to do with one of three areas. We've got a little logo. It's our Connect, Grow, Serve logo. We use quite a bit. You've seen this before. You'll continue to see it. This describes where we believe most growth happens in our lives. So your next step either has something to do with your connections. Okay, these are the relationships you're developing with other people, how you're investing in relationships, receiving from those relationships, but also giving in those relationships. If it doesn't have to do with that, then it has your next step has something to do with your growth spiritually with Jesus, like the patterns, the disciplines, what we sometimes call spiritual exercises you engage in that help you develop more and more the character of Jesus in your life. And if your next step's not there, then it's likely going to be in the third area, which is serve. How you're using what God has given you to have an impact in the lives of others and this world. And 90-95% of the time, if you're feeling a little stalled out or stuck, there's a step for you to take in one of those three areas. And discovering it and then being courageous enough, because they're not always easy, to take that step is what's going to catapult you into the next season of growth that you're in your life. Today we're going to wrap up our fourth week in this little mini-series on serve. So that's where we're going to focus today. If you have your Bible, turn to Mark chapter 5. And I've got a story I'm real excited to be able to share with you today. As you're turning there, just in case you decide to leave early, you get bored, you fall asleep, you just go to lunch early because you're just done. Let me just tell you where we're going today. I'll give you the punchline now so that, like I said, if you tune out before we're done, you know what I was trying to communicate today. And we'll summarize today's talk in this little sentence. I do for one what I wish I could do for all. Okay, it's written personally. I do for one what I wish I could do for all. Would you say that out loud with me? I do for one what I wish I could do for all. So let me put some flesh on that for us. Mark chapter 5. We'll start in verse 21 in a moment. Now this story I'm going to read you is kind of neat. It's a story within a story. So it's not the story I want to tell you. It's a story in the story that I want to focus on. It's like the movie Inception, like a dream within a dream. You don't know exactly what's going on. That's kind of what's happening in this particular story, where you think it's going one way, and then all of a sudden it stops. It goes a different direction, and then it comes back. So let me set a little bit of this up, because the context really is helpful to understand what we're going to talk about today. Start in verse 21. It says, Jesus got into the boat again. You'll see why again in a minute. Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. My little daughter is dying, he said. Please come and lay your hands on her. Heal her so she can live. Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. So here's a little bit of the backstory. Jesus has been on a very long run of extremely people-intensive work. That was Jesus' life, right? Was people-intensive work. Everywhere Jesus went, there's either a crowd that's wanting his attention, or some urgent need presents itself that requires him to get involved and make a difference in someone's life. I mean, this is like every day of his life. So if you go back a couple of chapters and read chapter 4, you'll start to see this pattern. In chapter 4, Jesus teaches a very large crowd of people, and he pours into them for quite a while until he gets to the point where he's tired, he needs a break. So he and his disciples climb into a boat to sail to the other side of the lake. And while they're sailing, he's got four guys, and four of his disciples were commercial fishermen before they became his followers. So there's good hands taking care of the boat. So he tries to take a nap in the back of the boat, catch a little rest. He's tired. Well, a storm hits right in the middle as they're crossing this lake. and it's a bad storm. It's starting to threaten the boat. The storm is so bad, the 4 commercial fishermen are so afraid they're going to die, they wake Jesus up. That's a bad storm, right? When commercial fishermen are afraid, like I've seen Deadliest Catch. I know how this works, right? When the fishermen are freaked out, and they rarely freak out, you know it's bad. So they wake up Jesus, and so Jesus calms the storm, which is in and of itself a great story. He just speaks, the storm stops. They arrive at the other side of the shore. They're still trying to get a break. And who's there at the dock to meet Jesus? A man who's possessed by evil spirits. That's what you want to see, right? When you're looking for some rest. All right, here we go. And so Jesus dives into that situation, casts the evil spirits out of the man. In the process, he ends up really upsetting a number of people that lived in that community, right? I mean, he heals a man, he frees him from an evil spirit. This man has caused chaos where he lives, and yet people are so bothered by what Jesus has done, they ask Jesus to leave. So now Jesus gets ran out of town. He and the disciples get back in the boat. They sail back, as we read in verse 21, to the other side of the lake. And when they get out of the boat at the dock, guess who's waiting for Jesus? Another crowd. This is like what Jesus' life was all about. There's this huge crowd, and he's just going right from one place to the other. And out of the crowd steps a man named Jairus. And we find out right away that Jairus' daughter is on her deathbed at home. She's extremely ill. And he begs Jesus. And fervently, it says. By the way, wouldn't you? Parents, you don't have to be a parent to even put yourself in those shoes. Like if your child is on his or her deathbed, you would find Jesus. You would bust through a crowd. You would make a scene to try to get this miracle worker's attention. He asked Jesus, please come to my home. Jesus agrees, and off they go. So here's the scene. Jairus is leading the way, showing Jesus where he lives. You've got Jesus following behind. Jesus has got his disciples around him. And then Mark tells us that there's this massive gang of people, this crowd that are crushing around Jesus. It's like this mob, this big amoeba just going down the road, circling around Jesus. That's the setup for what we're about to read. Jesus is tired. He needs a break. He's being pulled in a million directions. Everybody wants a little bit of the action. Everybody wants his attention. He's on his way to heal a young girl, right? He's got a purpose and a mission. And into that, we read verse 25, where the story takes a turn. It says, a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years, she had spent everything she had to pay them, but she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. I love the level of detail that Mark gives us. You know, Matthew and Luke, 2 other gospel writers, also tell this story. They don't give us this level of detail. Mark really gives us some background onto this woman, and I think this background is really important. He tells us, first of all, that this woman has battled constant bleeding in her life for 12 years. We don't know exactly what sort of medical condition this was. If this was today, right, we'd be able to put a name to this and describe it, and maybe be able to find a better solution to her situation. But this is some form of constant uterine bleeding that she just can't stop or control. It just goes on in perpetuity. And she suffered for 12 years with this. Can you imagine?
Everything back to one.
I mean, just even attempting to is almost impossible. 12 years. And we're not talking in 2023. We're talking about in the very first century, right? They've got no feminine products. There's nothing. I mean, she has no resources to be able to manage this. It affected every aspect of her life. 12 years. I was actually studying this week. On Monday, I was typing notes about this section of the talk. And at my desk, I wiped my nose, and when I did, I noticed that I was getting a nosebleed. And it got worse, and so I tried to stop it, which I get nosebleeds fairly frequently. I stopped them pretty quick. I couldn't stop this one. It went on for like 30 minutes. Before you knew it, I got a double barrel one. It's coming out both noses. I've got it pinched off. Everything's backing up. I won't go into detail, but it's like, this is rough. And I ended up getting like 6 of them that day. I had them even that evening at 6 o'clock. And I was feeling like, this is horrible, Jesus. I can't live like, I got a sermon to prepare, Jesus. I can't suffer through this. And then it occurred to me, 12 years she suffered. 12 years. So we know that about her in the story. We also know that her condition has actually gotten worse, not better. I mean, imagine for her when she first started, she probably thought, well, this is horrible, but I bet we can find a solution. but no solution was found. And 12 years later, it's worse than it ever was before. We find out, Mark tells us that she's penniless. She spent almost every penny she has on doctors, looking for some sort of solution, trying, whatever creative medical solution was out there or new treatment that people would offer. And we get the sense from the way that Mark describes the story that she was likely even taken advantage of by medical professionals. They promised her more than they could deliver. Oh, I've got something for you. If you just pay up front a little bit of cash, we can find a good solution for you. We'll get this solved right away. And she continued to get worse. Now, we'll layer on top of that another historical fact that we understand as we think about the first century. Jewish purity laws were very, very clear that a woman with this sort of menstrual bleeding would have been considered, anybody know the word? Unclean. Isn't that a nice, warm, inviting word? Unclean. She would have been told she was unclean. That would have been very certain. She's unclean. She would have been unclean while she was bleeding, and she would have been unclean for a period of days after that stopped. And it could have been 4, could have been 7. There were some different laws that at the time that were kind of in flux. But for a season of time, she was unclean in that society, and she had to abide by these purity laws. That means this woman had spent 12 years of her life living as an unclean woman. And that brought all sorts of issues into her life. She had to abide by all these laws of separation, which meant, just as an example, if she had been married, we don't know whether she was married or not, the Bible's silent on that topic. If she was married, she would have had to, while she was unclean, not had physical contact with her husband. Which means if she was married for 12 years, she had not been allowed by Jewish custom and law to touch her husband. Nor could he touch her. If she wasn't married, she wasn't going to get married. Nobody marries an unclean woman. Why would you sign up for that in that society? She knew that was off the record for her. Anyone who touched her, anyone she touched would have automatically become unclean, would have had to go through a certain series of days of purification. If someone sat where she had sat, and they found out later, oh yeah, an unclean woman sat there, now they were unclean and would have to go through a series of days where they would go through their purity ritual. My point is this: not only has she suffered physically, not only has she suffered financially and become financially devastated, not only is she the victim of medical malpractice, but she's an outcast in her society. Unclean, untouchable by anyone she came in contact with. To even be in this crowd, think about that. For her to be in a crowd where she's around people completely inappropriate socially and would have brought some pretty heavy consequences if she had been discovered. But what is she going to do? Like Jairus, she's out of options. And she's desperate. Let's pick up the story again in verse 27. It says, she had heard about Jesus. I love that line. She had heard about Jesus. And so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Interesting. There seems to be a blend of faith and superstition in her thinking. It was very common in the first century to believe that the power of a person who had supernatural abilities, their power actually could transmit from them onto their clothing. That was pretty common. Actually, to this day, you hear this sometimes. Actually, a number of years ago, I received in the mail a handkerchief from a TV evangelist. By the way, unrequested. I didn't mail order for it or anything. Just to clarify. But it was sent to me, and it was a pretty cheap little cloth. But I was told that brother so-and-so had touched this cloth, and that if I used it and touched it, that it would bring healing. And I don't know, I didn't save the handkerchief. Threw it in the trash. I probably should have saved it for my nose now that I'm thinking about it, but I didn't. But that's the idea. Maybe you've heard this before. Maybe you've seen an example of that in the Bible where if, pieces of clothing that, I think it was Paul, if he touched them, maybe it was Peter, people would touch that. So this happened from time to time, but there was a superstitious idea behind it. So there's this blend of superstition and faith. If I can just get up close enough to Jesus. So what does she do? She does the only thing she could do in that moment. She probably covered her head to try to blend in, hide herself. Of course, Jesus had all the attention, so that was her moment. Everybody's distracted. She comes up in the crowd. she fights through to get close to Jesus. And her thought is, if I can just get close enough to touch his robe, not grab it, because she's not supposed to touch anyone, is she? If I can just touch it, I could be healed. I used to do this thing years ago. The story is probably going to make some of you uncomfortable. I even thought, should I share? I'm going to share it. I shared it last gathering, so I might as well tell you. I used to do this thing in the airport. Nicole can attend, and even Courtney's here, my daughter. We would be in an elevator together as a family, and we would get in the back of an elevator, like if there's a bunch of people, and so our family's in the back, and like our older two kids, Courtney and Mitchell, are there, and Nicole, and so a bunch of people get in the elevator, and so they'd all turn around, face the other way, and I would elbow the kids, and I'd get their attention, and then I would reach up, like this big guy in front of me, and I would like touch like the shirt, like his sleeve a little bit, and they're like, no, and then I would like touch his collar on his shirt. I know this is super awkward, but the dad in me, like, I just love making my kids. Remember that, honey? I used to do that. Yeah, she loved it. And we get off the elevator, walk away. Dad, why do you do that? Because of your reaction right now. It's priceless as a father, and this is my job to do this to you. But I'm smart enough to know I didn't just like whack him on the shoulder. No, it was just a soft little touch on the collar. I didn't want them to know I was doing it. I didn't want them to feel it. I have a lot in common with this woman. That's my point here. I understand. Right? You don't want to send a message that you just want to, like, that's all she wanted to do. I have to touch it in such a way that he'll never know what I did so that I can get away with this and sneak off and everything will be fine if I get healed the way that I want. And then here's what happens, verse 29. It says immediately, like she touches his robe, immediately the bleeding stopped. Wow, it worked. And she could feel in her body that she had been healed from her terrible condition. I love that. That immediately her faith, even though it was mixed with a little bit of superstition, didn't matter. Her faith was rewarded and she was healed. Now, if that was the end of the story, we could end there because that would be enough, right? What a great story in and of itself that we just read. This woman, physically suffering, impoverished, victimized, socially outcast, and thrown aside, courageously takes a step of faith, enters into an environment with great risks, and expresses an act of courageous obedience. And she's rewarded and she's healed. What a great example for any of us today who find ourselves like financially struggling. If you find yourself sick physically or suffering in your body, what a great example if you feel like you have been victimized or taken advantage of by other people, or if you feel like maybe even you've been cast aside by society and you just don't know where you belong. What a great example that if you will courageously come to Jesus and reach out to touch him, that you can find in him the very thing that you will never find anywhere else, wholeness and healing and strength. I mean, that's a pretty good talk right there, isn't it? Right? Like, that's enough. But that's not where the story ends. As a matter of fact, this is just where I think for our sake it gets good. Verse 30. It says, Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. Notice that. He didn't feel it. He didn't feel his robe get touched. He noticed that healing power had gone out. That's a cool concept, right? It was like, I don't know if it was a buzz or like, but he could feel it in that moment. Like something happened. So he turned around in the crowd and he asked, who touched me? Now let's remember, story within a story. Jesus had somewhere to go, didn't he? He had a desperate father that was a few steps in front of him and a little girl back at the house that needed immediate attention. This is Jesus' life, by the way, every day of his life. Places to go, people to heal. No one would have faulted him in this moment if he had just like, okay, I felt some healing power, but I got somewhere to go. I got to keep going. If he had just kind of muscled through and kept going, wouldn't fault him at all. But he didn't muscle through. He stopped. He stopped. And he turned around and he asks the question, who touched me? Verse 31, his disciples said to him, look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask, who touched me? Right? We've all heard people say, there's no such thing as stupid questions. The disciples like, yeah, this is a stupid question, Jesus. What do you mean? Like, how can you even, there's so many people pressing. Like, we all have 10 people touching us right now equally. Like, we're in a mob of people. Yeah, you're being touched. I don't know for sure, but As I thought about this week, I mean, we give the disciples a little bit of a bad rap sometimes, like they didn't quite get it. Well, I don't know how they could have in this moment. I wonder if maybe part of why they responded to Jesus this way, I think this would be the case, is they knew that there was a little girl in a home just down the road that needed Jesus' attention, and she needed it quick. And they did not want anything, the crowd or unimportant questions like who touched me, to get in the way of keeping Jesus moving along. I mean, they felt compelled to kind of get him where he could go so he could do what he needed to do for this little girl. And as great as those intentions are, they didn't have the level of spiritual sensitivity in that moment that Jesus had. And Jesus didn't feel it physically, but he sensed something. He felt something spiritually, where he thought, okay, yeah, there's a girl that needs my attention, but there's someone right here, right now, in this moment that needs my attention too. There's something that I need to do that will have a profound impact on the life of someone. And so he asks the question, who touched me? Verse 32. It says, but he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, I bet, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. Can you imagine the fear she must have felt in that moment? She wasn't supposed to be there. She had reached out and violated all the laws that were required of her by touching someone's robe. And yet her faith had healed her. And now she has to go public with this story. And after years of being treated as a second-class person, I imagine it was very hard for her to expect that she would receive anything different from this crowd on this day, and even from this particular rabbi. More shame, more rejection, more being cast aside. But she knelt humbly before Jesus. She had been called out, and she told him her story. And as she finished, Jesus looked at her and said, this is verse 34. He said, daughter, your faith has made you well. Not superstition, not the edge of my robe. No. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. Your physical suffering ended today. Your social and emotional suffering ends today. Wow. I love what this story teaches us about our Savior, Jesus Christ. We have to use your imagination sometimes in the Bible because there's not everything here. We have to fill in some gaps. We don't know how many people Jesus healed in his lifetime, right? I mean, John, the gospel writer says at the end of his gospel, his last sentence says, if everything Jesus did was written in books, like the world's not big enough to contain all the books that would be written that would talk about what Jesus had done, which tells us what the worldview was of John at the time, right? To think that was literally, like, physically possible. But it also tells us that there's a whole lot of stuff out there about Jesus that happened that we don't have recorded. How many lepers did he heal? How many blind eyes did he restore sight to? How many sick people did he restore health to? How many dead people did he bring back to life? We don't know. So I guess I'll ask a couple questions, see if we can find some agreement here. Can we agree that one appropriate answer would be a lot? Can we just agree on that? Like, a lot. And more importantly, can we agree that Jesus didn't heal every single person? I mean, the need would be too great. I mean, even in this particular story, right? How many people that day in that crowd walking all around Jesus were dealing with some sort of physical or personal or emotional infirmity or like an illness or some issue? Right? How many people were sick in that crowd? How many marriages were experiencing some form of abuse? How many hearts had been broken and betrayed by a friend or someone that were just grieving? How much chronic pain was in that crowd that was walking with Jesus that day? How many homes did Jesus pass on the way to one particular home with a young girl who was ill? How many of those homes that Jesus passed had other people in them that were sick and desperately needed physical strength and healing? I mean, once again, I think the answer is a lot. I mean, the need was so big. The need must have been so overwhelming. I try to put myself in Jesus' shoes here, and I'm like, wow, I don't know if Jesus ever felt this way, but I think I would be like, God, it's just too much. The need is too great. Father, I know that, I mean, you and I are one, and I've got our spirit is here with me. but I'm just one. And I'm confined to this human body, and I'm doing everything I can with what I've got, but I'm not going to be able to meet every need. And I think it could have been disempowering and a little bit of almost like paralyzing for Jesus if he had let it, because he couldn't heal everybody. And so what do you do in that moment? Like, what's Jesus going to do in that moment when the sheer size of the need around him and the overwhelming demands on his time and his presence come face to face with him? He didn't get overwhelmed. You know what he did? He stopped. He stopped. He turned around. He singled out one woman in a crowd. And he raised her up. And he spoke life, hope, and healing into her life for the very first time in 12 years. That's what Jesus did. He did for one what he wished he could have done for all. He did for one what he wished he could have done for all. That, I believe, is part of what Jesus teaches us in this story. Do for one what you wish you could do for all. If you're a teacher, and we're thrilled that we have so many teachers who are part of our church here. I know why you teach. It's for the money, isn't it? Admit it.
Choose online.
It's for the fame and notoriety and the great rewards you get. No, you do it because you love kids. You love our kids. And you pour your heart into them. And you know, in your class and other classes, there's kids that need tutoring desperately. And if you could, if you're a teacher, I know this about you, you would, if you could, tutor every single kid in your class. You'd make sure you could, if you could, every kid in your school that needs it. But you can't, can you? There's too many. And so what do? Maybe you just tutor one. If you're a counselor, professional counselor in our town, I'm close enough to that world that I know that the need in our community is far greater than the available resources. And so it's tough if you're looking for a counselor, it's tough to find someone. So if you're a counselor, the calls, the requests for support and help, and will you meet with us, far exceed your available time. And you can't say yes to every couple, you can't say yes to every person, you can't say yes to every need that pops up. But from time to time, what do? You say yes to one, and you just minister to that person, serve them as best you can. Yes, sometimes you do it with some level of compensation, but I know our counselors in town times that's not a part of the story. They're just meeting a need. If you're a mentor, unofficial mentor, and we have some of you in our church that are this way, a lot of you, where people just ask to meet with you because they believe in you, they trust you, and they believe you have something to speak into their lives. And so they'll say, hey, can you get together for coffee? Can we hang out? Can we go to lunch? And if you're a mentor like that, you know that the requests made of you, they exceed your ability to do them all. You can't meet with everybody, but you can meet with one. Maybe you have a heart of compassion for children that find themselves in difficult situations. And you look at the global as well as even the national situation with what's happening with children who are at risk. And maybe it's the foster care system or orphan situation, and your heart breaks. And some of you might feel this way. You're like, man, if I could adopt or foster every single kid in the world, if I could just provide a home for them, I would do it if I could, but you can't. But maybe you can foster one child. Maybe you can adopt one. And by doing for one, you're doing what you wish you could do for all. I mean, I get it. I know your story. It's a lot like mine. You're busy. You got a lot of demands on your time. Doesn't matter if you're an adult, job, if you're a high school student, you got a lot of stuff going on in your world. You feel pulled a lot of directions. There's places to go. There's people to see. Everybody wants something from you. You're not getting enough sleep. I get it. And I got to simply ask the question, who might be tugging on your rope today? Who's nearby, in close proximity to you? And with love, do you even feel it? Or you're just muscling on to the next spot. I got somewhere to go, and I got a good need. A girl needs me. You just keep on going. We're meeting needs. We're on mission, but we don't have that spiritual sensitivity to the person right next to us who's just touching the road. That God has put us in that place at that time to meet that need. We do for one what we wish we could do for all. May we never become so overwhelmed by the size of the need around us or by the constraints we feel in our time that we sort of just give up. Instead, may we do what we can, when we can, with what we've been given. Anybody besides me love like nature documentaries? Any documentary people out there? Okay, so you'll like this story. I love those shows. I love creation. I love seeing God in creation. I'm kind of a naturalist in that way. I just see His beauty everywhere in this world. There was a show I watched a while back. It was about these baby turtles. It was like an ocean one. It was baby turtles being born on this beach, and the mommy turtle. Mommy, I just said mommy. That was weird. The mom turtle. The mother turtle. Excuse me. The mom turtle lays the eggs, and then these eggs will hatch, and then the turtles have to make it down. So this hatch happens, and I'll say this about turtles: like full-grown turtles, ugly, right? Are you with me? Like they're awful. I saw a video the other day. I was watching a show with Madeline, our 9-year-old, about this guy. He was taking his turtle for a walk, which, by the way, is an issue in and of itself, I think. But he's taking his big turtle for a walk. This thing was ugly. It was all, I don't know, just big old like snappy jaw. It was just like, wow. Baby turtles, oh my gosh, super cute, right? I know it's weird for me to say if you know me, but I'm like, these are so cute. And they come out and they got these little arm like flapper things. There's not even legs. They're just like little flappers. And they're just, their little neck, and and they know how to go to the ocean. They just know instinctively. They're normally born at night. This happens, this big hatch with thousands of these turtles happens at night. This is during the daytime. For some reason, they were born during the day. And so all they had to do was get from their little eggshell down to the ocean, and everything would be fine. But because it was the daytime, there was birds nearby. And the birds have learned the cycle of the annual, hatching of these turtles, and so they know to kind of hang around. And without the cover of darkness, these little cute turtles were just like totally exposed. And so these birds come in, hundreds of birds, and they're filming this, hundreds of birds on this beach, and they're just like picking off these turtles like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. I mean, it's just bad, like jalapeno poppers, just boom, 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 boom. Are you feeling it right now? Like, right? And then, as these shows do, the camera crew zooms in on one little baby turtle as it comes up out of the sand, and begins to kind of chronicle this little turtle's journey to the ocean. And then it shows like where the turtle's in the ocean, like 100, not even 100 feet away, maybe 30 feet away. And then it shows a bird. It shows the bird go, oh. And then it starts to show like the bird walking, and the turtle's like, oh man, I gotta hurry up. And the narrator's going on about how only 1% of turtles make it to the ocean. You've heard the guy. And he's going on, and then like the camera gets faster. They're setting it up so well, and the turtles like going and just looking, and the bird's getting closer, and I'm like cheering. I'm like, come on, little guy, go! I'm like on the couch, and I'm so excited, and my heart's beating. Are you with me? Do you feel your heart beating? The poor little turtle, and it's like the chaos of the moment. It's so stressful. Learned a valuable lesson as I watched that. Oh, by the way, didn't make it. Bird got him. I know. I wish there was a better end to the story, but as the narrator says, the circle of life continues on the beaches or whatever. Yeah, I didn't make it. But I saw that experience. I thought about that this week, and I thought, you know what? If I was there on that beach when those turtles were hatching, you know what I'd do? I mean, I probably shouldn't, because like the circle of life and all that, but I'd get involved. I would. I'd have to intervene. And that bird got a little close. Boom, it's getting my left foot pretty quick, right? And I'm going to do my best, if I can, to maybe protect some turtles. And I don't know how many I can save. There's thousands of turtles and getting eaten all over the place. There's so many. I can only be in one place at one time. But I'd do what I could. And if all I could do was save one little turtle, cute little fella, help him get to the ocean, and have a chance of maybe making it into adulthood, I would do it. And I wouldn't feel bad about it. And guess what? I bet you would too. And I wouldn't go to bed that night thinking, oh man, I couldn't save all of them. I'd go to bed being like, yeah, I saved that one. And I have that sense that I did something. I made a difference in one. May we, as the people of God, not be so overwhelmed by the needs around us. May we not be so overwhelmed by the constraints we feel on our time that we're unwilling to engage when we can, where we can, with what we've got, and make the difference in the life of one. What do? We do for one what we wish we could do for all. When you came in this morning, you received a Band-Aid, right? You were like, what in the world do I have this Band-Aid for? If you pull that Band-Aid out for a second, now you're like, maybe it's starting to make sense now. I got this Band-Aid. I don't know what's going to happen. Don't open it, just unless you need it. If you need it, go for it. But just keep it closed for a sec. You know, I don't know what your week's going to look like, but maybe you're going to put this Band-Aid in your back pocket, stick it in your purse, put it in your wallet. Just take it with you. Maybe you take it and put it in your car. If you have a job site, you put it somewhere. If you want to open it and like stick it on your rearview mirror, I mean, that's fine too. But what if this week you just kind of took this Band-Aid around everywhere you go? And I don't know. I would guess it in a room this size. And by the way, if you're online, sorry I couldn't give you a Band-Aid this morning. Maybe if you could just like maybe consider going to your medicine cabinet and grabbing one, and you could join along with us here. Maybe as you go through your week, I would guess that one of us at some point is probably going to come into contact with somebody who finds himself bleeding. They cut their finger, something happens, or maybe it's the kitchen, maybe it's the work site, and you might think, oh no, that person's bleeding. They need a doctor. Call 911. Maybe they need a doctor. Maybe you need to make a phone call, but it might be a little more superficial than that. You don't have to have medical training. Maybe all you need to have is a Band-Aid. And in that moment, you feel the tug and you just say, hey, here's a Band-Aid. And you give it to a person who's bleeding. Isn't that neat how God does that? It's like, oh, I have a cut. Oh, I've got a Band-Aid. Here we are. Maybe this just becomes symbolic. I mean, maybe you'll come in contact with someone else or someone this week who's bleeding in some other way. Like in a metaphor way. Not literally. They're hurting, they're grieving, they're suffering. Their heart has been torn, and they're just like, they're aching. And you become, in that moment, a spiritual Band-Aid that speaks life and hope. Why? Because you're there. That's where you're at. And what you've got is what you've got to give. And so you just minister to them. You don't need to call someone else. You don't need to find a professional necessarily. And again, some situations maybe require it, but most of the time, we just minister to people with what we've got, where we are, with what we've been given. So take this with you as a reminder to do for one what you wish you could do for all. May we never underestimate the act of love we can give to one person, because if we all did it this week, that's a pretty cool tidal wave we could create of God's love and goodness. Let me pray for us. If you close your eyes, I'll pray for us today, but also in light of our series coming to an end. Jesus, thank you for this journey we've been on these last 12 weeks. I can't believe it's over. As I've thought about where we've gone in this series, What's Next, we've covered a lot of really cool ground. And if we would simply lean into what we have learned together, I just am 100% convinced it would change us. To develop the kind of relationships that we need to have in our lives, that spur us on, that encourage us. Relationships where we pour ourselves into others, what you've given us. And we have people that we live in community with. To be the kind of people that prioritize growth, that never stop pursuing you and growing in our faith, Jesus. To be people who develop the sort of patterns and habits and spiritual exercises that shape us more and more into your character, Jesus. To be people that serve by giving what we've received away to others. Sometimes in uncomfortable ways, sometimes in ways in which we've been uniquely made, like we talked about last week, or sometimes just because we're the one who's there in that moment and somebody's pulling on our road. I pray that we as your people, Jesus, would step into that. If we do, then the people we come in contact with here in Bonner County and by just the impact of how small our world has become, people around the world will be impacted in a positive way because we're just taking those next steps with you. Whatever that step is, Jesus, I pray for courage for us. It's one thing to know the right thing, but to do it, to take the step, that's where we need your grace. And so that's what I ask for us as a community as we move forward. I pray in light of today, God, that we would do for one what we wish we could do for all, that we would see this example of you, Jesus, who sees a woman and stops and draws the attention of the world to her. One face in a crowd, one story out of many that we can tell today because you prioritize her. And may that be true of every single one of us, God. We do it not for our name's sake, for our goodness, or for our glory. We do it for yours and for your kingdom. Jesus, thanks so much for your love, loving us for who we are as your sons and your daughters, not for what we do. And we pray all of this in your strong, powerful, and mighty name. Everybody said amen together. Cedar Hills, thank you for being here. Go be the hands and feet of Jesus this week, however he leads you, and we'll see you next week to celebrate Easter. Thanks.
Excellent job, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, pretty clear. Very good.